Hello there friends and welcome! This is a guide on how to build a very powerful critical hit focused character, capable of dealing very high damage through all of the critical hit sources, parrying, stance breaking and of course backstabbing. With this build you'll even be able to stun lock some of the toughest bosses into massive critical hit chains, and even restore a lot of your health and FP with each of your critical hits. And like all of my guides, I'll also show you how to make this build viable from the very early game, as to help you take on all of the open world threats the game has to offer. So without further ado, let's get started. First with your starting class. My preferred choice is actually Vagabond because it is a very solid class overall with great starting stats. Your starting weapons don't really matter that much because with this guide you'll soon get the best ones, even at the early game. On the other hand, you can also go with Bandit, as they do start with the Buckler, a very powerful small shield for parrying, and also a Dagger, which has higher critical damage. But like I said, it doesn't really matter that much, and this build won't really be using anything that benefits from their higher starting arcane. So I would keep to Vagabond. As for your Keepsake, remember to go with the Golden Seed as usual, because how powerful an extra flask can be in the early game, as you're still learning how to play with your character. Now to start with our build progression, I want to begin with the stance breaking way of achieving critical hits. For those of you that don't know, whenever you deal enough poise damage to an enemy, they will get stunned and fall down to the ground, which then lets you perform a free critical hit on them. There is a super easy way of achieving this multiple times as early as the game starts, through an Ash of War called Flame of the Red Mains. This skill will release an arc of fire towards your enemies that can actually hit multiple enemies and even pierce through them for very high fire damage. Most importantly, the poise damage it deals is amazing. Usually, most of the enemies take around 2 hits to be stance broken. Some, however, like the dogs and the prawn enemies, get stance broken with just a single hit, and as far as bosses, usually 2 to 3 hits. There are really no words to say how powerful this skill is at the moment. It is very stacked and combines everything you could want. Area of effect, high damage, piercing and poise damage. Now do note that you can even stunlock bosses with this powerful skill, because after you break their stance once and get a critical hit, they'll fall down. And right as they're going through their recovery phase to get back up, in this small period of time you can get another Flame of the Red Mains going, for what's pretty much a free hit, thus reducing the amount of times you have to cast it while the boss is actually attacking you, to easily stance break them again and again. Just look at poor Malenia here. Not even the ultimate super boss is able to survive our Flame of the Red Main and critical spam, because as I've just said, whenever she's trying to get up you get a free hit, and then you just cast it again to easily stun lock her into oblivion. Now getting Flame of the Red Mains is super simple and can be done even at the start. It is right here at Fort Gael North, at the start of the Caelid region. So from the starter grace of the game, the first step, hop on your horse and then follow the road here until you reach Stormhill Shack, then simply head west along the road and you'll soon reach Caelid. Now go south for Fort Gael, and as soon as you reach the Fort Gael North Grace, just move a little bit north and you can already see some twinkling lights here going around. That means there's a rolling scarab who is invisible. So what you want to do is wait until he crosses the path again and attack as they're coming right over. Now that we have the easiest way of achieving critical hits consistently even against bosses, let us talk about the best critical hit weapon in the game, the Misericord Dagger. This weapon has the highest critical multiplier of them all, 140, thus ensuring you deal very high critical damage, and you can still achieve decent attack rating even though it's only a dagger. Note that this will work for all sources of critical hits, stance breaking, backstabbing and parrying. The Misericord Dagger is right here at Stormveil Castle, but to actually enter it we have to first defeat Margit the Fell Omen. I know he's considered one of the toughest bosses in the series, but trust me, with the Flames of the Red Main skill that we just got, Margit is very simple and very easy to defeat. You will get stance broken with just 2 castings, so you can easily overpower him through a massive chain of critical hits. A very easy way to do this is Dodge one of his attacks, use your Flames of Redmane, dodge again and use it again. This will stance break him. You get a free cast as he's getting back up, then you dodge once because of how fast he is, cast Redmanes again, he'll be stance broken again, repeat. It's that simple. Well, so to get the Misericord, after you defeat Margit, you have to go into the main armory room, the same place with the big portrait of a certain important character, and the Grafted Scion enemy. There are many ways of getting here, through the courtyard for example, from the Rampart Tower Grace, and you can even unlock a lift leading up to the Grace down here to the armory. Alright, so from the start of the portrait room, simply turn left and go past this door. Now use a Stone Sword key here, defeat the 2 enemies, and right at this corpse, we'll find the Misericord dagger, close to the bookshelf. Alright, so now that we already have the best critical weapon and the easiest critical skill, let us work on 2 very important talismans. After all, we've just defeated Margit too, so we have unlocked our second talisman slot. Both of these talismans are amazing for any critical focused character. And the best part is both can also be acquired very early in the game. So first we have the Assassin's Crimson Dagger talisman. With this, whenever you score a critical hit, you also restore your hit points by around 10% your maximum score, plus a flat 85. Now here's the best part. Whenever you score a critical hit against a big or large enemy with a dagger weapon, such as our Misericord that we just got, your character will perform 2 attacks during the same critical hit. What this means is the benefit from your Assassin's Crimson Dagger will be applied 2 whole times, for 20% of your health restored, which is simply amazing for survivability, thus reducing the amount of times you have to rely on your hit points healing flask. An interesting note is that, well, pretty much all of the bosses are bigger than your character. Even bosses like Malenia, who aren't that big, still get 2 attacks on a critical hit for double your healing. This lets you, well, miss parries, and even trade off some hits with the enemy while attacking them with your Flames of the Redmane, while still retaining high hit points. You can get the Crimson Dagger by defeating the boss at the Death Touch Catacombs here, an area that is very close to the Saint's Bridge Grace, the Black Knife Assassin, a boss that is very simple to defeat with your Flame of the Redmane's ability. For another very important talisman, we have the Assassin's Cerulean Dagger, the counterpart to the Crimson Dagger, except in this case, we get 15 whole FP points restored upon a critical hit. And just like with the Crimson Dagger, you also get twice this effect applied whenever you score a dagger critical hit against larger enemies, for 30 entire FP points restored. Your Flame of the Redmanes costs around 14 FP. You can easily make up for the entire cost, so you won't even need to spend points into Mind or get many FP flasks. With just these 2 talismans, our character will restore a big amount of both hit points and also FP on every critical hit, for amazing survivability. And to find the Cerulean Dagger, you'll have to defeat a secret boss right here in the Black Knife Catacombs area, in northeastern Liurnia of the Lakes. The easiest way to get here is to just teleport to the Eastern Tableland Grace, then follow the road here and turn east until you reach the Black Knife Catacombs. Once inside, you want to go down the stairs, past this area with the fog wall and the stone sword statue, then turn right here, and you'll see this area with the blades going up and down. Now you can already see a platform there to the left. The way to get there is to wait for the blade to come down, then wait right here and the blade will take you up. So just jump. Keep going right ahead. Now in case you might be wondering, some of the skeleton enemies here, they will keep respawning forever until you defeat the torch carrying zombie enemy. Anyways, after you reach this area, there will be an invisible wall right over here. And just ahead of us, another Black Knife boss that we have to defeat for our long-awaited Cerulean Talisman. Alright, so now that we know how to properly stance break the enemies with ease, And trust me, what I have taught you so far can carry you through the entire game. Let us focus on the other ways of achieving critical hits. First with parrying. To do a parry, you first need to have a shield equipped, and the shield must have a parry skill. Whenever you press LT or L2, your character will do a parry. Your parry can be either faster or slower depending on your shield, small shields having the quickest ones. Usually after parrying an enemy, they'll also get stunned, which lets you perform a critical hit on them, usually for higher damage than that of a stance break. Parries have both a startup time when you actually start swinging your shield at the enemy, and then a recovery time afterwards. The key is to hit the enemy with your shield parry as soon as they start swinging their weapon at you. It can be a bit tricky, and this will depend based on the enemy and how fast they swing their attacks, but you'll soon get the hang of it. And trust me, spamming parry is not really the way to do it. Also, do note that not all attacks can be parried. Usually, if the enemy is not swinging their weapon at you, chances are you probably won't be able to parry that, but there are some exceptions. The best of the parries early game is the buckler parry. However, fear not, because I will now show you how to get the 2 best parries overall that will replace your buckler parry. So you don't really need to have a buckler, any small shield from now on will work the same way. First we have the Ash of War golden parry. This parry is very special in that it's as fast as the buckler parry, but most importantly, it can actually let your character parry a wild range. So your parry will gain an area of effect, marked by this golden circle whenever you activate your parry. This is actually my preferred parry because of how much easier it makes parrying certain attacks, especially with enemies that have weapons with longer reach like halberds or spears. Plus, being able to parry an area is amazing, especially for PvP or even normal exploration in the game. Not to mention it does let you stay somewhat away from the enemy, so you don't need to be as close. Now, to find golden parry, you'll have to defeat a scarab enemy right here in this section of the royal capital. You'll have to climb up the stairs and eventually you can reach this area here. You can see the scarab there. A very simple way of defeating the scarab is to reach the top of the stairs here, then climb, follow along the ledge, and you can then hit the scarab with a jump attack. Pretty simple this way. Now, another powerful parry is the Ash of War Carrion Retaliation. This does not have an area of effect like golden parry. On the other hand, its unique quality is that it can actually let you parry magical attacks, including magical projectiles. Whenever you parry a spell, you'll get some floating magical swords around your character that will then attack the enemy when you get close. You can find Carrion Retaliation by buying it from an NPC at the Caria Manor area. But to get where he is somewhere around here, you'll have to drop down from the Three Sisters cliff around here, the southeastern part. My preferred shield for both of these powerful parries is the Iron Round Shield. A small shield, so it does have faster parry windows, but most importantly it is also the small shield with the highest physical negation, 80. So even if you botch your parry, chances are you'll still block some of the damage the enemies deal to you. You can find it by buying it from the merchant right here in the beach around the starter area, very close to the coastal cave. Alright, so now let us talk about the last remaining critical hit source, the ever so fun Backstabs. Doing backstabs is very simple, as the name itself implies, you'll have to hit the enemy from their back for a very tasty critical hit. Also, don't forget that you can use your crouch ability to sneak around foes and easily get backstabs against them. Whenever you spot an enemy that's not moving around, they are prime targets for backstabs, and there is a surprising amount of them in the game, even at the late game. Now, when it comes to the faster enemies, it can be somewhat hard to get backstabs going against them. So here's a simple way of doing it, through the aid of the infamous Ash of War, Bloodhound Step. Bloodhound Step will highly increase the power of your dodge by making you pretty much kinda blink away towards the enemy in whatever direction you are facing. So it does wonders for backstab fishing. You can find Bloodhound Step by defeating the Night Cavalry, so during night time, at this bridge right here, directly north of Lens Rise. Alright, so at last, let's talk about stat allocation for our critical hit focused character. Your main damage attribute, well, you have many ways of doing this, but for me, it's going to be strength. The reason is simple. You can get strength scaling in your Misericord Dagger, because the stance breaking way through Flame of the Redmanes is by far the easiest, and as soon as you get this Ash of War, you can apply the Fire enhancement to your dagger weapon. The scaling might not be the best at sea, but trust me, it does the trick just fine because you can eventually get more than 800 attack rating. The key to getting big critical damage is to actually split your damage between physical and then one of the other sources, so magic, fire, lightning or holy. With this you already have fire, and there are quite a lot of ways of increasing your fire damage in the game, which will not only increase your critical damage because of the fire we have on our Misericord, but also the damage of our Flame of the Redmanes, which can get pretty high. With 61 strength, whenever you add the bonus from Godric's Great Rune for a +5, you'll have 66, and then when you two-hand your dagger, it will become the equivalent of 99 for the highest strength modifier possible. As far as faith, I do recommend you have 20 to 20 or 25 if you don't have Godric's Great Rune, just so we can have access to some of the best faith buffs, including Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength, which will actually empower our critical hits twice. First, because of the increase to physical damage, and second, the increase to fire damage, which our dagger also has. The rest of the points can certainly go into Vigor, for a very nice amount of hit points. And here's the fun part about just going with strength. You do get quite a lot of leftover points that you can spend whatever. We aren't even level 125, which is the cap for some players, and we still have a lot of points to spare in whatever you want. If you don't care for strength and the fire upgrade, you can also make your Misericord into, let's say, quality, and then invest a lot of points into faith, so you can then add the lightning property to your dagger to a weapon spell buff. And the same goes for intelligence to the magic damage property. Okay, so before I finish this guide, let us talk about other gear choices for our critical character. We already covered the weapon, so Misericord, a Sacred Seal to cast some faith buffs. As far as armor, the choices are really up to you, you can go with whatever you want. But I do think the Black Knife set really complements the entire sneaky critical damage style of the build, especially because it will reduce the sound of your footsteps for easier backstabbing. As far as talismans, another very important amulet is the Dagger Talisman, because it will increase your critical damage by a lot. You can find it in the Volcano Manor dungeon area. Besides that, Fire Scorpion Charm if you went the fire damage route, and most importantly, if you like using Flames of the Redmane, then the Shard of Alexander that you get at the end of Alexander the Jar's quest, because it will increase the damage of your skills by a lot. For other powerful sources of generic damage boosts, we have ones such as the Ritual Sword Talisman. Please remember that I already have a guide linked to the site here and down below on how to min-max damage through all sources possible in the game. The same goes for tanking with your character, even as a sneaky rogue or thief type. There are other ways of doing this without having to rely on heavy armor. Alright everyone, so this was it for my critical build guide. If you found this guide useful, then please remember to like, subscribe, and even consider becoming a channel member. Be sure to comment any other ways that you have when it comes to increasing the power of your critical hits. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.